All right, I'm excited today to be here with Rebecca Pirillo, our new Chief Operating Officer here at ERPHealth. And we're just going to have a little chat kind of about, Rebecca, your path in behavioral health and kind of where you see this industry going. But I figured we'd kick it off to just kind of give everybody a little background, what drew you to behavioral health care and what have been some of your experiences?
So I started in behavioral health care around 15 years ago. Um, really started I spent a lot of time in family treatment in regards to having family who have gone through treatment for behavioral health SUD. So I've always had kind of an inkling that this was important. And then one of the first companies I worked with was a marketing company whose first client was a behavioral health facility back 15 years ago. And then it kind of evolved since then. And this has been my space for the last 15 years of my career.
Recently, you've made the decision to come on board in a full-time capacity. What kind of went into that decision? And was it natural or a little difficult? What do you think?
I think it was both. I think it's always been natural here. This has been, ERP has been something close to me for a long time and had the privilege of being around the staff and the brand and the mission here for a good amount of time. So the decision to come fully, especially in the operating perspective, has been something that I've been thinking about for a long time. There's always been the shift, especially because my background's marketing, that nothing really new is happening in the marketing space, right? The fatigue of census drive and the same content pieces has always just been a weight that is fatiguing to marketers. And as you know, maybe not everybody does, for the last 3+ years, I've migrated a little bit more out of marketing and more into operational. And where I see that big impasse is brand, culture, and operations. And to me, that really encompasses what ERPHealth does and what it can provide to a client. If they can use what we build here to touch all of those aspects of the business, especially in marketing, I think it's huge. So this seemed like a really natural fit for me to come in, especially where you guys are at.
That's kind of an interesting perspective because you really have worked with some of the largest behavioral health organizations in the country, literally, from an executive level, but from a marketing lens, I guess you were kind of stepping in and seeing it. But you're right, there's really just a natural overlap because in our industry, ultimately, we're in the clinical services business, right? Behavioral health care, it's easy to kind of get ultra focused on CPT codes, on, RCM, and all of this is necessary, EMRs, but at the end of the day, this whole industry is built around this interaction between people who need help, who are dealing with mental health conditions, addiction conditions, and qualified clinicians capable of offering that help. So, we've always believed, and we really get put into a clinical bucket, but it's important to start with measuring, improving, and securely kind of documenting the outcome of that interaction between person who needs help, person capable of offering that help. And what we've noticed, and you tell me if we're right about this, but if you get really good at that process that I just described, you start to identify trends in your organization as a behavioral health care provider.
Yes.
And then you could do really interesting things with those trends, such as marketing, and it really dovetails into the business side of the house.
100%. It's one of those things. I mean, for me being here in certain capacities for the last few years, I believe what is provided from the clinical perspective, what is being recorded through the technology that we have, is such an asset for marketing. I'll talk there, just from the perspective of every facility sells the same stuff over and over again. If I get told one more time, we do individualized treatment, dual diagnosis, that's great. I believe everybody does. It's being sold all the exact same way. And which is important, the end user, the potential client, patient coming in and looking for treatment, they don't know how to navigate the difference of this sea of sameness is being told to them constantly. And what the end goal is for a lot of the time, somebody looking is who's spending the most on Google, who's at the top of the page result. And then when you go to it, it's flashy images. Something I used to say all the time was people are like, oh, you sell healthcare. I was like, I sell real estate. There became a point where I was more selling real estate and pretty pictures and the fishing ponds and all this great stuff than I was selling clinical care because there was no way to quantify it. Because when you said we do great clinical, we do individualized treatment, it did fall into the same rapport that everybody else says. And this and the data that's being provided from ERPHealth and the Grow platform specifically for providers is something to qualitatively put on there and support the clinical. So yes, you want the place to look nice. You want everything to kind of flow, but you also want to make sure you're getting the care that is needed and it's being tracked and looked at in some type of way. And this was the first time I'd really seen that. And then you can boil that down into, okay, you get to see demographics. What are they doing well from ages, from types, income levels, those type of things where you can actually use your marketing dollars more efficiently. Because this is, say often, and most people know you're in the space, is especially for commercial insurance providers. This is second to trip and fall attorneys cost-wise on Google Ads. This is not a cheap marketing.
Yeah.
So the more you can target that niche, the more important it is. And it isn't just, okay, you saw the shift from travel, where everybody wanted to go to Florida or travel to a decent amount. Now you're finding hyper-localized care for this space, which means, okay, you target closer around you that use driving distance. That's perfect. But what do you do well? Who should we be focused on for AMA, for how your clinical treats? So getting the data that is provided from ERP was huge to target marketing campaigns, not just what's put on a landing page, but how can we target those ads efficiently and use the budget to what matters the most, not just insurance, but who gets treated the best.
From a clinical position, not necessarily the business side of the house or marketing side of the house, but I don't know, 5, 8 years ago, like it was a destination industry,
100%.
right? People wanted to go to Florida. They wanted to go, but in recent years, it's become very much localized. Do you think that really presents a need for providers to be, I guess, more organic or kind of focus a little more on, building things out and offering clinical expertise, showing that you do a really good job with the demographics that are local to that community?
Yes, I believe fully. That shift happens for a lot of reasons. A lot of it comes into in-network rates when you see a lot of, especially the commercial providers moving into in-network rates, and the competition is just vast. It's growing year over year. So when you're seeing the drive to get clients in and you want to be hyper local, that has to move all the way down the funnel. That's not just hyper local as in the Google ad is a radius of 150 miles. That is specialized care for that demographic. If you're in the suburbs of Philadelphia, you have to look at what that comes down to for blue collar workers. What does it mean to treat union based people? What does it mean if you're trying to hit a demographic that is the 18 to 26-year-old? And what does that mean for where they're at locally? And that all should work very parallel because your work staff is also going to be local. So trying to be and compete with everything that you see at a broad level in the organization is a difficult game, and it's a difficult race unless you have millions of marketing dollars. But if you can really specialize into treating who's around you and becoming the primary local provider, when I say local, I don't mean 15 miles. If you're a detox res, I still mean 150 miles around. But knowing who that is and targeting them where they're looking and making sure that you're promoting the clinical care that matches it.
If you're going to invest thousands of dollars in these marketing campaigns, it seems like a no-brainer to work in at least a little bit about your performance, like how well you're, serving these clients. And people don't realize, I think when they see technologies like ours, and we've had this discussion, it seems like this humongous endeavor
Yeah, big.
that is like this massive, and really the truth is, for 4 hours over the course of 4 weeks, 80% of our customers at least have 80% engagement rates. Like, this is a easy lift.
It's an easy lift.
And then if you factor in like the potential rewards on the other side of it, I don't know, what have you put any thought towards that? I know we've had some brief discussions about like, this is a no-brainer.
It seems daunting because the word, just to talk brass about the Grow platform, the outcome tracking platform, the word outcome tracking is kind of nebulous, right? We went through those phases where it wasn't talked about. Now it is. And the perception of outcomes has always really lived in this space as sending a survey out to see if people are in active recovery or if they need assistance. And we all know the 100 red flags that live within that. And I think it's come over the course of time of people not trusting outcome data because they think that one point is the outcome data. And then when you're getting into the level that ERPHealth and especially Grow gets into, it seems daunting because the truth is trying to get those surveys was kind of daunting.
Yeah.
And it was alumni making calls and it was doing all this. So to be like, oh, it's not just that. We're going so much deeper. We're doing it during treatment. We're doing it across all these type of assessments and patient reported surveys. It seems like a lot. And then when you get into, and the biggest thing of why I've worked with you guys for so long and came on in this position was it's made to be so easy. As you said, the 4 hours, 4 days, 80% adherence rate. It's easy to onboard. It is easy to use. The user experience of this, you've heard me talk about it for years, I think is bar none in the space. And that's a huge driver. And the tap devices where they get to hold the thing and it's patient reported, so it's not a clinical lift, like maybe the assumption is, and it's also not an operational lift. So really trying to express the complexity that we track data and all of the great use cases for the business without making it seem convoluted and a huge operational lift is that balance act. In the game of technology, right? Everybody's getting hit with, you have to use this new technology solution. Oh, there's a new EMR, CRM, all-in-one AI, all this stuff coming in. A lot of them are a big operational lift because it has to go into your everyday work stream.
Yeah.
Grow for providers has been made that lift does not have to happen. So that's the biggest challenge, is making sure that we're conveying the complexity of outcome tracking that we do, which is not what most people know when they think of outcomes, and that it's not that lift.
In 5 years from now, this is where this industry, ends up, and the providers who were prepared did blank.
I think it's going to go back to localized treatment. I think it's going to stay in that. I think competition is growing. And as we're moving out of, we have for the most part, when I started in this business, we were still a very much stigma-based business, right? Most people didn't know, where do you get treatment? What is treatment? That is all shifted, which has allowed more people to have an economy of choosing where they want to go. So that world of who has the prettiest photos, who has the best location, that's not going to do it anymore. You're having the younger generation coming in where they understand behavioral health care. A lot of them have been talking about it. My son's in daycare and goes to a calming corner for his mental health if he needs to. So you're having people who are talking about this. So they're going to look for the clinical care and want to be reassured that they're going to a place that not just looks nice or maybe has good reviews, but has the clinical standards that they're looking for. And having clinical outcomes and patient surveys and all of this in-depth being used to determine where you're going for treatment, I think is going to be a huge place going forward.
Yeah. Well, I think I speak for the whole team at here, ERPHealth. We're so grateful to have you on board and that you decided to take the job. And thank you for taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited.